Hi, and welcome to day 15. In the next 4 days, we're going to go over the 12-step program. But what we've decided to do is something a little different. In the original format of the 12-step program, it was rather successful in the 40s, 50s, 60s, up to about the mid-70s. It had a much higher success rate than it seems to now. Well, one of the big differences is when the 12-step program was first really founded and going, when someone approached, they did the 12 steps rather quickly. They didn't spread it out over months, and that they did it rather quickly. In fact, if you read in the original text of the big book, when Dr. Bob and Bill Wilson met, in the period of one weekend, they went through the whole program. They walked them through the program. And for the next few years, every time they would get a newcomer, they would walk them through what was the founding of the 12 steps very quickly. And there's something about being immersed in the program and going through it quickly that's much more powerful than spreading it out through time. Because one of the things that happens, if you try to spread it out through time too much, well, you begin to think too much, you begin to doubt whether it's going to work. So you want to do it quickly. So over the next 4 days, we're going to go over the 12-step program the way it would be done in the 50s or 60s, or in the current context, there's a movement afoot called the Back to Basics movement, where you do it very quickly. You do a step a day, or no more than a series of steps a day, no more than taking a week and then moving on to the next level and the next level. But as we get started, the first thing I want to talk about is why the 12 steps. It's very misunderstood. If you read the original text, it was meant to be a bridge back to normal living. It was never meant to be a life in and of itself. Now, many people choose now to make it a life in and of itself. They go to meetings for years and years and years. They get very active. That's fine, but it doesn't have to be. You can use it as a lifeboat or a life raft. It doesn't matter, or a lifeline. Or you can use it as a support, just a support. It could be a network, or for some people, it becomes their social activities. It's not unusual to see people first get into recovery, especially in the 12-step world, and for the first 6 months to a few years, they're super active. They're going to a meeting a day. They get super active because it becomes their social network. It becomes their lifeline, and it becomes the way that they give back to society. But many times you see people not totally abandon the 12-step program, but begin to pull back. You know, maybe they go to one meeting a week, maybe they go occasionally, whatever works for them. I use the analogy, it's much like church. There are many people that go to church 2-3 times a week. It's whatever works for you. Other people go once a week. Some people go occasionally. It's whatever works for you and makes you feel better. That's the key. There's no rules. There's no hard and fast thing to do. But really, it's a way to live. And again, it can be a big part of your life, or it can be a smaller part. You can use it as a support. But the best thing that it does is it gives you a place to find models. When you're new in recovery and you're trying to get models of how to handle situations, if no one around you knows how to handle that situation without drinking or drugging, or it's a new situation, one of the great things about the 12-step world, if you go to meetings and you get to know people, there's people that have been through absolutely everything that can happen in the human experience and did not drink or use or relapse, whatever the addiction was, they worked through it without going back to the addiction. So that's the best thing. So that's the strength of it. So if you're going through a tough time, maybe you've been laid off from a job, or going through a relationship issue, or financial issue, health issue. Again, if you go to some meetings, you will find people that have been through that and have come out the other side and maintained their sobriety or their clean time. Also, there's something interesting about the 12-step program, and many people don't realize this. The energy of the group is very relaxing. I was reading this little study says, you know, when you look at how energy flows in this, the vibration of a 12-step meeting generally is quite high. It's around 500. You know, if you're under stress, it's 300. If you're going through a lot, it keeps getting lower and lower. So the higher the number, the better you feel. So what we want to do is keep that. So there's something about going into a 12-step meeting that relaxes people. And this has to do with actually how your neurology works, because human beings are pack or herd animals. What that means is when you get with your pack, when you get with your herd, when you get with your tribe, you feel better. It's not unusual to see somebody, they're all stressed out, and they're tense, they're nervous, and then they walk into a 12-step meeting and they calm down. Even though they may walk into the meeting and drink 3 or 4 cups of coffee, which should raise them up, they calm down, because it's the herd effect, it's called. Because if you take a cow and you separate it from the herd, it'll get stressed out and it's all nervous. It'll try to get back to the herd. When it gets back to the herd, it tries to get into the middle of the herd. And if we wired it up or we were studying its blood, it's all stressed out when it's separated. When it gets back in the herd, it lowers. So you see it with horses, with all kinds of any kind of pack or herd animal. And human beings are like that. We like our tribe. We like our group. So there's something about that, especially when you're new in recovery. Especially on top of that is if your family has substance abuse issues. You may need to find a new place to feel safe. So this is up to you. But we want to look at what the 12 steps are. You know, it's an interesting way to look at it. It was all based on the original 12-step program was Alcoholics Anonymous. And they say in the program, if you want what we have, this is very important. If you've never been to meetings or you start to go to meetings, it's one of the tenets of the program. If you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you're ready to take certain steps. Fine. But the statement, if you want what we have, is very important. So when you walk into a meeting and you see all these people sitting there, make sure that the people you choose to model has what you want. It's not just what they say, it's how they're living. Because everyone can say good things. It's kind of like going to church. Everyone's great on Sunday morning in church. How are they acting Saturday night? So you want to make sure that people aren't just saying it, they're doing it. Yeah. One of my sayings in the 12-step program is, if you sober up a horse thief, now you got a sober horse thief. So we want to make sure that the people you choose to model have what you want. And what it should be is a place to get better from an addiction. It's not a place for medical advice, legal advice, or financial advice. It's only support to get clean and sober. So if you hear stuff on medical or legal or things, I would avoid that. Just as I've heard people say in the 12-step world, just because you've been to jail doesn't make you a lawyer. Just because you've been sick doesn't make you a medical doctor. In the old days, this is another thing that started to switch from the program. In the old days, Bill Wilson, one of the founders of the 12-step, and so was Dr. Bob, they were in therapy their whole lives. They never stopped going to therapy. They never stopped getting outside help. And they encouraged it. And something's happened, especially in the last couple of decades, where suddenly it's like, nope, all you need is this program. Well, that's, to me, very scary. It's a great place to get advice on how to stay clean and sober, but if you have other issues, you might want to go there for the correct information. So today we're going to go over the first 3 steps, steps 1, 2, and 3. And step 1 is came to believe that we are powerless over alcohol or drugs. It's the same step. And our lives have become unmanageable. So came to believe that we were powerless over alcohol or drugs and our lives had become unmanageable. That's the step. In fact, the 12-step is the same for all the 12-step programs, alcohol, drugs, gambling, sex. They just changed the one word. But what's interesting, when you look at this step, people automatically jump on powerless. They say, I am not powerless. If you really read the step, and people don't, it says, we were powerless. It does not say we are powerless. We were powerless is past tense. It means you were powerless. Before you get the knowledge, before you get the chance to sober up, while you're active in an addiction, you're powerless. And I would still argue, if you choose to go back to the addiction, at that moment, especially when you add alcohol, drugs, or whatever the addiction is back into your system, you are powerless. When you're under the influence, you're powerless at that time. While you're removed from it, you have a choice. You're not powerless. And that's one of the keys. Because once you're clean and sober, you have the ability to respond. Responsibility is the ability to respond. So if you use that, then you're able to make better changes. But if you choose to use again, at that moment, you are powerless because you've removed the conscious fight that you have. So what you want to do is realize it doesn't say you are powerless, it says you were powerless. So when you look back on your life, it also helps you, when you look at getting better, it helps you. So it's all about the stimulus response. Because again, does thinking about using drugs or alcohol cause you to use? No. You have to think about it before you do it. It's real known in the 12-step world, whether it's alcohol, drugs, even gambling and sex, that you relapse you start the relapse long before you do the behavior. In AA, they'd say you pour the drink long before you do it. In NA, they'd say you already scored the drugs long before you decided to do it. Why? You have to mentally prepare for it. Especially if you've got a little bit of time. From a few weeks onward, you buy the time. So between stimulus and response, there's that ability to make a change. And the key is to accept help. That's why you're here. And again, in the old days of the 12-step program, they assumed that by the time you reached out for help, you already did a lot of the stuff that we're talking about. Step 2 is came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Again, it's past tense. It does not say you're crazy. It does not say you're insane. It says came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. It's past tense. One of the things that happens in some meetings, they get off kilter and they'll start talking about all the crazy things they did when they were drinking or drugging. Well, if you really look at it, you don't have to be an addict or an alcoholic to do crazy things when you're under the influence. That's what alcohol and drugs do. They make you do crazy things. For us in recovery, it's the things we did even when we weren't at the moment of relapse. I mean, you were crazy. You set yourself up to relapse. You did these other things. The things you did to make sure you could drink or drug, lying, cheating, stealing. That's what we're talking about. And when they talk about sanity, it's really just the old saying that insanity is doing the same behavior over and over again and expecting a different result. And for us, we think this time when I drink or drug, I won't go off on a binge. This time I can handle it. This time it will be different. Where sanity is seeing it for what it really is. If I drink, if I drug, I'm going to be out of control. I'm going to be powerless at that moment. If you can accept that, it makes it much, much easier to do. And then you can do something different. So the second step just admits that I need help greater than myself. And again, it can be God, it can be a higher power, it can be your spirit, it can be a group, if you get into any kind of group, it could be your higher consciousness. It's some power greater than yourself to help you overcome this issue. And then step 3 is made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the power of God as we understood Him. And again, it's past tense. Again, in the old days, they assumed by the time you reached out for help, you'd already kind of worked through these first 3 steps. Your life was out of control, you knew what you were doing was crazy, and now you're ready to really make some changes. So it's past tense. You've already made the decision. It doesn't say make the decision, it says made the decision. By reaching out for help, you've already made that decision. But it's also very important to remember it's up to you. I usually use the 3 frog stories. If there's 3 frogs sitting on a log and one frog decides to jump off, how many frogs are there? Well, there's 3. The frog made the decision. It doesn't say he jumped, he just made the decision. Every day people make a decision, but they don't take the action. So in fact, when you look at the old version of the 12 steps, it was explained to me that it's a bridge. When they said it's a bridge back to normal living, the first 3 steps get you up to the part of the bridge that's going to cross the river of addiction, and then the last 3 steps takes you back into normal living. So these first 3 steps are just done to help you get ready to make the change. How do you know you've made that decision? Many times I hear these people get off on tangents about I make a decision, I take my will back, I do this, I do that. If you've made the decision, you can tell if you've done the 3rd step. If you do, steps 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. The stuff we're going to do in the next 2 days, if you do those steps, then you've done the first 3 steps. It's that simple. And again, people think too much. They put too much effort into it. It's very intense, but the first 3 steps are like the on-ramp before we get ready to really do the work. So again, you made the decision to turn our will and our lives over to the power of God as we understand Him. And also too, when you really review those first 3 steps, it's a group phenomenon. There's power in numbers, so as part of the group, it says, we turn our will, our lives. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol. It's a we program. So you're not alone. Even if you're doing the steps alone, you're not the only person to ever do it. There's been hundreds, there's been thousands. In fact, by this point, there's literally been tens of millions that have gone through it. And the success is quite good for the people that do the steps in there entirely and really work at it. So what we want to do is look at these steps for what they are. A bridge back to normal living. And you can use it, again, you can get very active in the program. You can be somewhat active in the program. Maybe it's not your thing. One of the things I've always noticed is that people that were very social when they drink or used, if they were bar drinkers, if they much preferred to go to a dope house than do it by themselves, fit better into the 12-step program than people that like to drink alone or use their drugs alone, because it's even more stressful to begin to go to a group. So it's up to you. It's what do you want? Personally, I like the program, and it gives you a network. There's a group setting. You can learn how to have fun again in a group dynamic where it's safe, and it's very ongoing. In every city in the United States and Canada, there's several AA meetings a week. There's online meetings, not just what we do here at the Live Free program. There's online traditional AA meetings. The world is changing. So you can do this. You can do what you need to do. And again, it depends, what do you want to do? One of my friends is very active in the 12-step program, has been since he got involved, way over 30 years. But it's his social outlet. It's his way that he gives back. He likes going to meetings and share his experience, strength, and hope, what he did to get his life much better, to save his marriage, to save his career, to do the things that he needed to do. And he's still active. He goes to a few meetings a week after 30-something years. He's retired now. But it gives him a mission, a purpose, a passion. And we're going to talk more about mission, purpose, and passion like we did before, because if this is what you decide to do, it's great. It gives you something to do. It gives you a reason to get up in the morning. It gives you a way to help other people. And again, it's all personal. It's up to you. And again, the power to develop is up to you. You develop your own belief, what works for you. And realize it will probably change through time. And it's all about growth. Many people, when they first come in, maybe they try to go back, or they go back to their, if it's religion, their religion of they were brought up with. And then maybe they go into a different religion. Maybe they decide to do some other kind of spiritual program. Whatever works for you. So what you want to do is develop your idea of your higher power. And again, you want to journal your thoughts. You know, how can you use this? Maybe go to a few meetings to see if you like it. Maybe, and my best advice for that is don't just go to one or two, go to several. And one thing you can do that most people don't realize they can do in every area of the United States anyway, and in most parts of the world, in fact, they have what they call a central service office that services that area for AA. And again, it's run by volunteers, but if you call, let's say the central service office, and say, I'm looking for a meeting in my area, and let's say you're 30 years old, you could say, I'm 30, are there any meetings more for young people? Or are there any meetings for just women? Maybe you're uncomfortable if you're a woman and you don't want to walk into a group of men right now. Maybe you're gay or lesbian and you want to go to a gay or lesbian meeting. What's interesting, what a lot of people don't know, is there's meetings for every type of person in the world. So if you call the central service office and say, I'm a 30-year-old professional, do you have any meetings that are kind of geared that way? Because what happens a lot of times, people just walk into a meeting, and let's say you're 30 and you're single, and the average age in that room, you see it here in Florida a lot, is like 65 to 75. Everybody's been married for 50 years. You can feel comfortable because you're all recovering, but there's not a lot of commonality. There's not a lot of real rapport. Or if you walk into a meeting and it's mostly young people there where you're at, you feel much better. You know, one of my friends is a hardcore motorcycle enthusiast. He's a biker. And he always says it's funny because people won't know there's one meeting that's kind of geared for hardcore bikers. And somebody will walk in and he goes, we'll accept them. But of course, they can't relate when they look around the room. Everybody's in leather. Some have colors on. They're tatted up. That's fine. But in the same vein, he goes, if I walk into a meeting and it was, you know, a gay and lesbian meeting, he would be welcome, but he wouldn't have the same rapport. So it's whatever works for you. But if you call the central service office, just look up AA on the internet for where you're at, and they'll give you the central service office, and you can say, give some of you what you're looking for, and they really know, and they want to help, and they can steer you in the right direction. So that's a little thing you can do, because it's the power to choose. And have some insight when you're walking in. Remember that you're looking for people that you can relate to, and that they have what you want. It's not just what they say, it's how they live. And remember, the first 3 steps are past tense. It's more thought than action. Where when we get to the next steps, it's much more action. In fact, it's all action. Steps 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 are very action-oriented. That's where you cross the river of addiction, right? We've ramped up and we're ready to do. And so why are we doing this now? Why didn't we do the 12-step program at the very beginning of our Live Free program? Well, it was a conscious choice. And the reason is I wanted you to get a format, a basis, especially people that don't have any basis in recovery. So when you walk into a meeting, you've already got some different ideas, some different outlooks, and you understand what you're trying to do with your mind. You're changing some beliefs, your patterns. And again, when you walk into a 12-step program, that's logical levels in action. It's a different environment where there's different behaviors, where there's different, they teach you capabilities and skills. You learn new beliefs, new values, new attitudes. And again, it'll shift your identity. And it's all about a higher power. So when you look at it that way, it's very interesting. And again, you know, when you look at how long the AA program's been around, and really there's some history of it, and we're going to give you some links later on that you can look this up. You may know more about how your brain works in recovery than somebody who's just been sitting at an AA meeting for 5 years, because you've learned something a little different. So one of my greatest joys is when people that have been in the 12-step world and then had some issues, and then they come through our program and they say, I wish I would have known this when I was first starting. So we're trying to help people with that attitude. So what we're going to do now is, remember, you want to journal your past experiences with addiction. What worked? What didn't work? That's important. So maybe you did things in the past that worked a little bit, but then what didn't work? It's not unusual. People say, what worked is when I got very active in family or school or work or something, and I did good. What didn't work was when I kept trying to hang out with the same people. So you want to grow and change as we're doing this. So make sure you journal this. And tonight, when you lay down to sleep, this is a great one, especially to really listen to the audio program as you're going to sleep. So now we're going to do a relaxation. But remember, today is the day. This is the moment. Now is the time. So now we're going to take a deep breath and relax. Good.